What is good, YouTube? JPR Tech here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at two completely different lenses that are great for beginners. One is the Sony kit lens and the other one is the Rikenon 28mm vintage lens. First, we're going to go over some of the specs and pros and cons of each lens, compare them together, and then see the footage side by side, and you could judge for yourself which one is right for you. So first off, we're going to start off with HB for beauty. So the Rikenon P by Ricoh is a Japanese lens that is, yes, actually pronounced Rikenon. So that's how I'm going to pronounce it for the rest of the video. Now the version I have is the K mount, which mounts into Pentax K mount. And this is the good old 35mm full frame format. It has a focal length of 28mm. The lens groups is 7 with 7 elements. Now the maximum aperture is f2.8 and the minimum aperture is f22. There are 7 aperture blades that are circular for great bokeh. The minimal focus distance is 30 centimeters, which that's about the standard around this focal length. And also the filter diameter is 49mm, which is also very common with these old vintage lenses. And that's great news because filters and ND filters are really cheap in this diameter. So one thing lacking that is very important is image stabilization. So you have to rely on steady hands and a good pose to get a nice clean shot. Now the Sony kit lens, on the other hand, this one is a more modern E-mount lens that can mount into full frame E-mount as well as APS-C E-mount cameras. It's a focal length of 28mm to 70mm, but I'm going to be focusing on the 28mm end so that I could compare it with a vintage lens to see which one is better. Now this lens has 8 groups and 9 elements with a maximum aperture and a variable aperture at that of aperture 3.5 to 5.6 and the minimal variable aperture of f22 to 36. This one also has 7 aperture blades that are circular, and surprisingly you do get pretty decent bokeh with this kit lens. The minimum focus distance is 30 centimeters. Again, this is pretty standard at this focal range. And the filter diameter is a little bigger at 55mm, but that is still in the cheap side. Now one thing that this lens got going for itself is the image stabilization and what Sony calls the optical steady shot, or the OSS. Even a lot of expensive lenses don't have OSS, so this is a very big advantage for videos. So speaking of pros, let's go ahead and talk about the pros for the kit lens. As mentioned, it has stabilization, and that's great. It also has autofocus, which is smooth, quiet, and fast. So bloggers might benefit from this, but not so much for videographers that rely on the smooth pull focus that is more natural, more filmic-like. So that's actually not the strongest suit of this lens, but it is sharp. That's a really good pro on this lens. Now the Rikenon, on the other hand, it has smooth manual focus, so it's very easy to do pull focus during video, and for videographers this is a dream. Now the image quality, I was surprised how sharp it is, wide open at f2.8, and we can't say that about every lens. And it gets ridiculously sharper as you stop down, so this lens is amazing. And another good thing is that it's really cheap. This one only cost me $30. So all these vintage lenses, you could get them around this price range from the 30s to the 50s, which is great. They're also really lightweight, compact, and great for travel. And now about the cons, well, it is manual focus. So tracking subjects for stills will prove to be a challenge in max apertures, and even stopping down will still be a challenge. Also, the lack of stabilization will penalize you with higher ISO to compensate with the higher shutter speeds. So depending on the body that you're shooting with, this might affect your image quality. The kit lens, on the other hand, does have a few cons of itself, mainly the price. While not as expensive as a Zeiss lens, it still costs a couple of $100s even used. Its plastic build and plastic filter thread means you gotta handle with more care, and with the price, keeping that in mind, yeah, you wanna be careful and not drop this lens. It also has a variable aperture as mentioned before in the specs, so that affects filming. So when you zoom in, it's gonna change the aperture, meaning you're gonna get a slight different exposure, and that could affect your overall shooting style. So pretty much these two lenses are completely different. They cancel each other out, so that means you can't go wrong with either one. So basically, in a nutshell, one is cheap but demands patience during composition and focusing, while the other one has a quiet, fast autofocus with stabilization, which will cost you a couple of $100s. Now my 2 cents are, if you're planning to shoot on a tripod in a controlled environment, save your money and get the vintage lens such as the Rikenon 28mm f2.8 and even like the Pentax 50mm f1.7 and the f1.4 that can be had for like $50-$70. All of these are great lenses. But enough talking about lenses. Instead of hearing me talk about these lenses, it would be so much better if I just show you with some good old B-roll footage. Now I'll shoot each lens with the opposite lens. So whatever lens you see on the screen, remember, I'm shooting with the opposite lens to record that footage. I'll try my best to keep all the settings exactly the same. I'll try to do the same movement so that you could judge yourself as to which lens you like best and which one would actually be a better buy as your first lens. So let's roll the footage. Well, what do y'all think? Leave a comment down below. Now my personal opinion is that they both had great image quality. In some shots I did see that the Rikenon could use some stabilization, but I was surprised at how similar the two were. Remember, these lenses are decades apart but perform great. So I hope you guys enjoyed this comparison. If you did and feel like being helpful, like and share the video. And as always, you all have a good one. Matane! Oh, what? Are you guys still there? Wait, yes, actually, there is just one more thing.
But there is one last thing.
If you notice in this video, I'm a little sharper than usual, and that's because I'm doing a very interesting experiment. I'm actually upscaling the video from the A7S to 4K with a 4K converter, and then recorded via an HD video recorder. So you guys gotta check out this ghetto upscaler gadget that I have put together, so subscribe to see that video when it comes out. I'm telling you, the poor man's Atomos Ninja is for real. Yeah, don't miss it guys. See you then. Peace.